express our sincere condolences to Delegate Danielle Walker, who recently just lost her son, sadly, to acute myeloid leukemia. He was only diagnosed about 3 weeks prior, and it was a very rough few weeks for Delegate Walker. So we need to keep her and his friends and his partner, his family, all in our thoughts and prayers, and send them positive thoughts and vibes over the next few weeks. Delegate Walker is also asking for people to make an appointment to give blood so that it may help someone else. Dimitri, her son, was a recipient of several transfusions, and it was one of his wishes as well that everyone, if they can, to register to give blood. If it's safe for you to do so, please contact your local Red Cross office online, or call 1-800-RED-CROSS or 1-800-723-2767 to make an appointment to give blood. Those of you in the Charleston area, we've also scheduled a blood drive at the Capitol. So definitely check that out if you're able to. So first, let's start by the way of introductions. I'll go first, and then if each of you members could please introduce yourselves and tell us a little about yourselves and your caucus. We have myself, Cody Thompson, Mary Thorp, Bob Baker, Kelly Elkins, and Marlene Midget. So I'll go first. My name is Cody Thompson. I'm a delegate in the West Virginia legislature. I represent the 43rd district, which is most of Randolph and all of Pocahontas counties. I live here in Elkins. I'm a school teacher. I teach 12th grade civics. Mostly I teach a couple contemporary studies courses as well. And I'm very excited for the work that the Affirmative Action Caucus is going to put into it. I'm so happy to hear last night that we were going to be working on a new name because, again, I think that is not inclusive enough as to all we are trying to accomplish with this great group of vested individuals. So I will turn it over to Mary. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Cody. I'm Mary Thorp. I live in Upshur County. I'm the co-chair of the Senior Caucus, as well as the co-chair of the Affirmative Action Committee. And yes, Cody, I love that. It's a little outdated, affirmative action, but it does get us to where we're going. So I do consulting work. I collaborate with people in designing conversations that shape the future of humanity. I've been a designer all my life, and I'm here to bring my skills in design to designing this new shape of the West Virginia Democratic Party. And then let me turn it over to Bob Baker. Bob, remember to unmute yourself.
That would certainly help, wouldn't it? I'm Bob Baker. I'm a co-chair of the Senior Caucus. I'm retired now, but I was a legal aid attorney in West Virginia from 1977 until 2010 with Apple Red, and then with legal aid with Appalachian Legal Aid, and then Legal Aid of West Virginia, which were all successor corporations, just change of names. I worked in Beckley most of that time, although I was in Charleston for about 4 years, and spent a couple of years as director of Apple Red before it merged into Legal Aid Society of Charleston. So I've been active with low-income issues for a long time.
Very good, Bob. Kelly, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Kelly Elkins. I am from Raleigh County, Beckley, West Virginia. Right now, I'm enjoying a month off of not doing anything but treating myself. And I'm the co-chair of the City of Beckley Human Rights Commission.
Very cool. Thank you for being here tonight. And Marlene, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marlene Nugent. I'm from Ohio County in the Wheeling area. I guess I'm representing Hancock, Brook, Ohio, Marshall, and Wetzel. That's where I retired from being the executive director for over 30 years in the early childhood program. And I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And I guess I did forget to mention too that I'm also one of the co-chairs of the LGBTQ plus caucus. So that's also why I'm here. So as we go through the meeting tonight, we do ask that everybody please keep your devices on mute unless you are speaking. That way we're not speaking over each other and it's going to make the meeting go a lot more smoothly. We're going to provide time for everyone to participate in the discussion towards the end of the meeting. However, please use the chat feature to share your thoughts throughout the meeting. If you'd like to, share a thought or share a question, go ahead. Feel free to use that as throughout the meeting as well. I'd also at this time like to ask Mary Thorp, who is our co-chair of the Affirmative Action Committee with Hollis, to provide the historical context of the work that we are undertaking right now and the importance of everything. So Mary, would you like to give us some background?
I'd be glad to, Cody. Thank you. And some of you have heard this before, but for me, it never gets old. And it gives me the opportunity every time to remind myself what it is we're doing here and the timeliness of it in what's going on in our whole country today. So those of us that are on the Bylaws Subcommittee, as well as the full Affirmative Action Committee, recognize the importance and value of this work. And in 1974, which is 47 years ago, the National Democratic Party mandated that all state parties adopt an affirmative action program to provide for representation of certain diversity groups that are proportional to their participation in the Democratic electorate. The program was mandated to have specific goals and timetables to achieve that purpose. On March 15th of this year, 2021, the West Virginia Democratic Party Executive Committee adapted new bylaws that mandated this Affirmative Action Committee to draft an affirmative action plan. The purpose was to encourage full participation by all Democrats, with particular concern for historically underrepresented groups such as Asian American Pacific Islanders, Black Americans, Latin Americans, LGBTQ+, Native Americans, persons of disability, seniors, which we've agreed upon as 60 and over, women, and youth, which is under 36 years, in all party affairs. So all of those people be included in all party affairs. The Democratic Party rules provide for more than just geographical representation. It also provides for representation by gender in that all official Democratic organizations must be equally divided between men and women. And there is inclusive language regarding those that identify as non-binary. And I think I'll say myself personally, I don't even understand that, but that's part of what there is for all of us to learn and to include. However, the Democratic Party also provides for representation for certain historically underrepresented groups of the Democratic Party. It also provides for I said that already. It also provides for underrepresented groups. For example, our current data in West Virginia, Black Americans make up 6% of the people who vote for Democrats. Therefore, the Article 8, Section 3 of the National Charter, as well as the Article 8, Section B of the newly adopted West Virginia Democratic Party bylaws, mandates that our state party have a program that provides that 6% of West Virginia Democratic Party Executive Committee are Black Americans. And I will say currently there are 3 Black committee members on that, maybe now 4, with Kim being part of it, but we're still not at that proportional amount. Additionally, our most recent data of the other historically underrepresented groups are as follows. The Asian American Pacific Islanders, 1%. Latin Americans, 2%. LGBTQ, 8%. Native Americans, 1%. Persons with disability, 24%. And youth, who are those under 36, 26%. And as you know, women and seniors have full representation already here in West Virginia. The role of the bylaws committees is so important because as we ask people to join the party, volunteer for our candidates, and become our candidates, we must have a structure that allows for them to have a seat and a voice at the table. The governing structure is key to how that happens and for protecting the rights of Democrats at all levels. Thank you for listening. Go ahead, Cody.
Thank you, Mary. At this time, I do want to give 2 other people an opportunity just to introduce themselves. Who I mistakenly kind of forgot. Please don't hate me. I'm working on 3 brain cells, so just don't hate me. That bike rider there really kind of took it out of me. Mary Ann Claytor and Rusty, Williams, if Mary Ann, you want to go first and just give a brief introduction of yourself, and also Rusty, if you'll follow afterward, just a brief introduction, if you don't mind.
My name is Mary Ann Claytor, and I am the co-chair of the Black Caucus with Hollis.
And I am Rusty Williams. I'm the co-chair of the Disability Caucus with Kelly. Glad to be here.
And I would invite Hollis to introduce himself too, Cody.
Absolutely.
Hollis Lewis, co-chair of the Black Caucus and co-chair of the Affirmative Action Committee.
Thank you, Hollis. Just for housekeeping purposes, am I forgetting anyone right now that is on our? Okay, I don't think so. I think I finally got them all. Third time was a charm. Thank you all for that and for humoring me here. All right, so first I want to talk about the purpose of this meeting and the purpose of this committee, the subcommittee for the bylaws. So our task is to draft bylaws and perhaps offer a template to the diversity caucuses. The bylaws must not conflict with the National Charter and the DNC bylaws of the West Virginia Democratic Party bylaws. In our first meeting on June 2nd, 2021, the members of the Affirmative Action Committee unanimously agreed that while we would take steps to begin this process, we understood that there were 3 caucuses that have not yet developed, and we would not begin drafting the bylaws without their input. Specifically, those are the Asian American Pacific Islander Caucus, the Native American, American Indian, and Indigenous Peoples Caucus, and the Latin American Caucus. Those 3 caucuses will meet on or around July 6th, 2021, and elect their co-chairs, who will then join the Affirmative Action Committee and hopefully this subcommittee. Therefore, what we will do tonight is for discussion only. I'd like for us to have a conversation about a few things that have came up related to the bylaws at all the caucus meetings on June 1st. On June 1st, all the caucuses passed the same resolution. The part of that resolution that is directly related to our work is the following. We strongly urge that the West Virginia Executive Committee not adopt any rules that require historically underrepresented Democrats to be member of any party entity in order to become a member of a caucus, or require an individual to seek permission or support of any other person or entity in order to become a member of the diversity caucus in which they identify, or to put any additional barriers, including but not limited to paying dues, in place that would restrict or deter an individual's participation in such diversity caucus. The draft caucus bylaws that were provided to us and that are in the draft AA plan that was approved by the West Virginia Democratic Party Executive Committee on June 3rd has language in it that would require a person interested in being a member of a caucus to either already be in party leadership in some manner, or find and ask a county chair or executive committee member willing to recommend them for membership. Obviously, our caucuses are opposed to this. I suggest that we spend some time discussing this issue, assuming that we are going to stand by the request of our caucuses. I think this is an issue that we need to get others to understand that voted for the draft affirmative action plan, and how would that rule, if adopted and implemented, affect the people that are currently active members of the caucuses, how it would affect people trying to join a caucus. The language in the draft bylaws is as follows. Section 1. Section 1, qualification for membership. Caucuses may be comprised of state and county executive committee members, county chairs, delegates, or alternates to the immediately previous state Democratic convention, or a Democrat who has been recommended by a county party chair or SCDP executive committee person. Further, members must have an interest in identifying and promoting blank issues of West Virginia, subscribe to the purposes of the blank caucus, and pay such dues as may be established by a vote of a caucus. So at this point, I would like to open it up for any discussion as to anyone's thoughts, concerns. I obviously share, when I first read the bylaws that were presented to us, I immediately had some concerns over requiring dues, because I think that, it's illegal to charge someone to vote. I think it should be illegal to charge someone to be a party member and to participate in that party. It should not cost a single dime to participate in government. I also have a problem with somebody else having a discussion about whether or not we're qualified to be within our party. I don't believe we should have to vet ourselves. I don't think I should have to prove myself as an openly gay man to be a member of the LGBTQ plus caucus, or a co-chair, or a member of the West Virginia Democratic Board. So I'd like to open this up for discussion. If I think Kelly has raised her hand. So Kelly.
Oh yeah,
go ahead.
I do. When I'm representing the co-chair of the Disability Caucus, many individuals with disabilities collect SSI. That's $661 a month. And they're expected to pay their rent, put food on the table, pay their utilities. Individuals with disabilities who may not physically be able to have a job, that's going to be almost impossible for them. So paying dues or not buying food, or paying a needed bill, getting medication, to me, that makes no sense at all. It doesn't.
I completely agree, Kelly. And also looking at it from the perspective of the youth and senior caucuses, many of our youth have yet to really, establish their careers. They can't afford it. Many of our seniors are living on fixed incomes with, Social Security income, and their prescription costs are rising, exponentially. How can we ask them to, forget about their electric bill or their prescription or paying their rent or their student loans? or just trying to get by with getting some food, but pay us a due. I think it's just insane. Thank you. Bob, you've raised your hand, or Hollis, are you raising your hand too? I can't tell.
Yeah, but if he wants to go, he can go ahead first.
Okay, because you just popped up. Okay, Bob and then Hollis, if you'd like to go. Discussion.
Okay, yes, I want to agree completely that there should be no dues of any kind required to be a member of a caucus, just as there are no dues required to be a member of the Democratic Party. Although I do think it would be helpful to have language in there of saying that people who can afford to donate to the Democratic Party should do so.
Okay. Hollis?
How you doing? Thank you. Yeah, I agree with you guys that the dues requirement is ridiculous, if that's even such a thing. However, I would say, and this is specifically for the the Black Caucus, while I would agree that we want to be inclusive and we want to let anybody join anything they identify with, I think we have to be careful in that we want people who are that. You see what I'm saying? I understand that we want to open it up, but I think that we specifically, I know us, we have to be very careful not to be diluted with people who aren't what they say they are, as far as being a Black American.
Hollis, could you give us an example of that? I'm not clear what you mean.
Rachel Dolezal. I don't know if you ever heard of her.
I'm sorry, I just didn't hear you. Could you say it again?
Rachel Dolezal.
No, I don't know her.
She's a white woman pretending to be a Black woman, and she was like head of her local NAACP. She taught at HBCU, but she was a white woman who was 100% white woman identifying or claiming to be a Black woman. So again, I'm not saying that's a thing. I'm just saying that I understand we want to be inclusive, but at the same time, we have to consider, the different caucuses and how we're made up.
I totally I know exactly who you're referring to, Hollis, and I totally agree. My only concern and with that, because that would be encompassing not only of, the African American, the Black Caucus, but, the LGBTQ. Obviously, it's, fairly easy to, look at youth and senior, but looking at like my caucus, like how if someone identifies as LGBTQ, if they identify, if they say they identify as LGBTQ plus, how would we, if I'm not allowing somebody in, if they were hypothetically straight, I have a concern with that. Like that's what really frustrated me during that executive party committee, whenever someone was talking about, they would like to vet us. And I just thought that was very concerning. How are you going to vet me as an openly gay man? Are you going to ask for references? Are you going to ask around to see if I am attracted to men? And I understand what you're saying, but how, I don't know. You know where I'm going with that? I just don't know how that would work.
No, and again, this is just for discussion. Like I don't have an answer. I guess what I was just presenting, and I hate to do that. I was sort of just presenting a hypothetical problem, and I know that that's something that could hypothetically happen. Just speaking for myself and just for our individual caucus, and I don't want to. I don't know. I don't want us to. I don't want to say that, but I'm just saying it's a hypothetical problem that could happen. So I don't know how we put language in there to. I don't know the answer. I guess is what I'm saying. I guess I'll just open it up for discussion.
Can I say something, Cody?
Go ahead, Mary.
I just think, first of all, the discussion is great. That's where things come into view that we can't sit and picture ourselves. And one of the things that I was thinking about in the diversity caucus, for instance, we've opened the diversity caucus to people with disabilities, caretakers of people with disabilities. Even Kelly is someone who you know, who stands for people with disabilities. So it's a pretty broad, we've made that caucus pretty broad to be inclusive. So it's really interesting to have this conversation to say, well, how do we include people? What's the language that we put to it that includes people? And then that said, all of these caucuses are open to the public. So anyone can come to any caucus. You don't, if you're not part of the caucus, you can't speak in that unless you're called on. So you could communicate to the co-chair to say, I have something that I would like to add. This is what I'd like to add. Could you include me in your agenda? You know, there are ways, this is all new to everybody. So there are ways for us to look at how to be inclusive in a way that we're none of us used to. So that's what I've heard so far.
Okay, thank you, Mary. I see Kelly, Bob, and Mary Ann. If you want to go in that order and share your thoughts.
Mine was just a spin-off with including disabilities and having that verbiage as that we included as advocate. But you have hidden disabilities, you have anxiety, you have depression, you have, you know, I guess there's a whole lot of hidden disabilities that someone may not. Do I have to provide my labs that I go and have blood work done because I have a disability? To me, that just doesn't, you know, I know the Disability Caucus, if there's any barrier, then that's a disability. And that's what the ADA recognizes.
And that's something too, like I haven't ever jumped into the Disability Caucus, but I am diagnosed ADHD inattentive type. I take, you know, medication, but you know, I don't know. I just feel like, you know, like, well, here's my prescription or here's my diagnosis. I don't know. I don't feel like we should do that. Bob, and then Mary Ann.
Okay, well, I think all the groups are a little bit different, and we don't necessarily have to have one rule that fits all of them. You know, you could have the situation of somebody pretending to be Black or pretending to be Asian American or pretending to be a Pacific Islander or a Latino or Latina, even if they're not. And that's a little bit of a weird thing. With seniors, I think, you know, it's a different kind of a proof question. It's easy to show whether you're 60 and over or not. Hardly anybody claims to be 60 or older if they're not. So, but it doesn't make much difference. Possibly, certainly with LGBTQ and with people with disabilities, we don't necessarily want to be questioning them at all. And so maybe some kind of a good faith requirement that you have to be in good faith in claiming to be a member of the class or the group, and not try to go too much beyond that. Or maybe we could have separate qualifications for each caucus and let the caucuses decide what they should be in their own bylaws, which will follow these pretty closely once we get them done.
Okay, Mary Ann.
Well, I believe we need to make sure.
Mary Ann, we lost you. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was just saying, I wanted to make sure, you know, we're always inclusive. And I know in our caucus meetings, we have allowed anyone to speak, whether they were, you know, actually, you know, a Black person. But I was thinking about the idea, like with the women's club that we, you know, the Federation of Democratic Women, they allow men to be to be in the membership also. They just won't hold like a leadership type position, but they're considered like associates. And I think what Hollis may have not want us to do is to have the voices of those who are associate as Black African American to start to become overshadowed by persons that haven't had to live that struggle or living in the skin, or even because I know there's some biracial people, they might associate as white, some may associate as Black, you know what I'm saying? So I just want to make sure that we were clear. We weren't trying to be exclusive. We just want to make sure that those voices are not overshadowed by people who want to be allies and really don't say they associate as that category. So we may want to put some type of ally language maybe in, so that we can still have the, being inclusive by not kind of watering down the presence of diversity. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I completely understand what you're saying. There for a while, when I was the only openly gay man, I was the only LGBTQ person in the legislature. A couple of times I felt kind of slighted whenever there would be an issue that came up, and regarding the LGBTQ plus community, and I wasn't even consulted or asked about it. It was a reporter would go to somebody else, and I was like, hey, I've been openly gay now for I don't know, like 15 years. I've been you have one you can talk to, a person who's experienced this life and experienced the struggles and the hate and the love. Totally get what you mean, and I think that's you put it very well. Hollis?
No, I just want to say, Mary, you articulated that perfect. That's exactly what I was trying to say. I didn't really articulate it well, but that's exactly what I meant. We just don't want our voice to get diluted when that's kind of like you just alluded to, Cody. When you're in these spaces, that can definitely happen. So yeah, thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Hollis. Rusty?
I think I meant to hit like the clapping I agree with you hands, not the raising I need to talk to you hands. So my bad.
Cody, this is Marlene. I don't know where my hand's at.
That's okay. You can go ahead.
I'm going to jump right in. When we were talking, when I heard y'all start off talking about the statement that somebody wanted to vet us, I don't think it was taken in the right context. When I heard the vet, I thought our educational backgrounds or our passion. I didn't think that if you were a disability or if you're gay or if you're Black. I just didn't want to get us hung up on that one statement and not move forward. So.
Okay. Thank you, Marlene. We appreciate you. So great discussion, guys. But we do kind of need to move on. This is our kind of an informal meeting, so we're not going to do anything.
Cody, could I just add one more thing? Selina suggested in the chat that maybe the caucuses should figure this out, and then bring it to the Affirmative Action Committee through the co-chairs. So it's a great conversation and a discussion to further, I think. Thank you.
And I think that we have some great, facilitators that can, pose that question to the different caucuses and kind of get some, feelers about how we want to draft this. Because we don't have to throw concrete together tonight. We want to make this look real good, make it as good as possible. So that's why this is a great meeting to do that, facilitate, the different caucuses and get everyone's input and to address concerns like we just discussed. But for time, we do kind of need to move on to the next item, which the next item is the 6 basic elements of an open party. And following the 1964 National Democratic Convention, where Fannie Lou Hamer, a member of the Mississippi Freedom Delegation, I may have pronounced her name wrong. If I did, I'm sorry, testified before the Convention Credentials Committee about being arrested and beaten for simply trying to register to vote. That convention created the Special Equal Rights Commission. That commission traveled across the nation to hear the stories of people, especially Black Americans, Latin Americans, women, and youth, that had been systematically cut out of participating in the Democratic Party. The committee then developed the 6 basic elements for an open party. On January 8th, 1968, the Democratic National Committee adopted the 6 basic elements as an official party policy. Later, the DNC required state parties to include them in their party rules. At one of these were the West Virginia Democratic Party bylaws, but have been removed over time. Considering the importance of this committee related to protecting the rights of Democrats, I would like us to review these 6 elements and the benefits that they would bring to the party as a whole, and to the people in West Virginia who wish to participate in the party at all levels, and discuss incorporating them into our bylaws. How do these relate to our work of bringing new people into the party, and how do they bring people into the party leadership? How do they help us grow the party? And let's go ahead and discuss that. If anyone has any thoughts or discussions about those 6 basic elements of an open party system.
May I start with the first one, Cody?
Absolutely, go ahead, Mary.
So number 1, all public meetings at all levels of the Democratic Party in each state should be open to all members of the Democratic Party, regardless of race, sex, color, creed, national origin, religion, ethnic identity, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, economic status, or disability, hereinafter collectively referred to as status. Does anybody need me to read it again? In fact, it's
We are
in
also
the,
posted in the chat.
yeah, thank you. So is there anything anyone wants to say about that? About including it into our bylaws and how it affects, here are the questions that Cody asked. How do these relate to our work of bringing new people into the party? How do they bring people into party leadership? And how do they help us grow the party? Anything anyone wants to say?
I do, Mary.
Go ahead, Marlene.
In our women's caucus group yesterday, one of the things that came up, and I don't know if it belongs with that one, but we wanted to make sure people with children were welcome and that our meetings were child friendly. Because there have been instances where people were told they couldn't bring their child to a Democratic meeting. So I don't know where that goes, but I think we should consider that.
Thank you, Marlene.
Familial status?
That is something that we actually discussed also in our caucus yesterday, which, you know, the LGBTQ plus movement has changed extensively over the years. And many couples now, many families are LGBTQ plus. You know, you have, you know, same-sex families all across this country and in West Virginia especially. And it's changed. So I think that's definitely important, making it a more inclusive environment for families. To bring your children to, that's a great way to bring people into our party and make them feel welcome and accepted. Kelly, did you want to add something?
I did. Couldn't we just include a familial status into that section where it says kind of the discrimination, you know, age?
I've made note of that, Kelly.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Great, thank you. I didn't know that term, and so thank you.
Yes, familial status.
Yeah.
Because that also includes, you know, single people who are single, you know, to not be, you know, felt left out if it's like a something that is more catered towards couples or something, but, you know, we don't want to leave a single person out. So that's a great term. So
I'm just going to reread it real quickly and see if there's anything anybody wants to say. And And my request is that you really take this in, that you can own it as part of the basic elements, one of the 6 basic elements of an open party. I'm not going to read all those different qualifications, but what it, number 1 says is all public meetings at all levels of the Democratic Party in each state should be all open to all members of the Democratic Party, regardless of that whole list of things. Can everybody get that? Is there anything anybody else wants to add?
Yeah, let me.
Please,
Mary,
Bob.
I was just thinking that in fact it should be open to all meetings, regardless. All meetings should be open to all people that are members of the Democratic Party, even if they don't fit into one of the diversity groups.
Very good. So that statement says all public meetings at all levels of the Democratic Party are open to all members of the Democratic Party, period. Great, thank you. Let's move on to the second one. So number 2 says, no test for membership in, nor any oath of loyalty to the Democratic Party in any state should be required or used, which has the effect of requiring prospective or current members of the Democratic Party to acquiesce in, condone, or support discrimination based on status. And remember, status is that whole list of qualifications that we said before. I'm going to read it one more time because I didn't totally get it, like in my body.
That's okay. I kind of sped through that. Thank you for reiterating.
So basically it says there should be no test for membership. That's the fundamental of this whole thing. It says no test for membership in, nor any oaths of loyalty to the Democratic Party in any state should be required or used, which has the effect of requiring prospective or current members of the Democratic Party to acquiesce in, condone, or support discrimination based on status. So is there anyone who would like to say something about that number 2 basic element? Then I would say there's alignment with it. Thank you. Number 3 says, the time and place for all public meetings of the Democratic Party on all levels should be publicized fully and in such manner as to assure timely notice to all interested persons. Such meetings must be held in places accessible to all party members and large enough to accommodate all interested persons. So again, the time and place for all public meetings for the Democratic Party on all levels should be fully publicized and in such manner as to assure timely notice to all interested persons. Those meetings must be held in places accessible to all party members and large enough to accommodate all interested persons. Anything anybody wants to say about that? That's pretty clear, isn't it?
Yes.
It's pretty fundamental to including people in the Democratic Party. Anything else anyone wants to say? Okay, good. Number 4 says the Democratic Party on all levels should support the broadest possible registration without discrimination based on status. Anything anyone would like to say about that? All right, thank you. Number 5 is a little bit longer, so bear with me. The Democratic Party in each state should publicize fully and in such a manner as to assure notice to all interested parties a full description of the legal and practical procedures for selection of Democratic Party officers and representatives on all levels. Publication of these procedures should be done in such fashion that all prospective and current members of each state Democratic Party will be fully and adequately informed of the pertinent procedures in time to participate in each selection procedure at all levels of the Democratic Party organizations. Each state party should develop a strategy to provide education programs directly to voters who continue to experience confusing timelines for registration, changing party affiliation deadlines, or lack of awareness of the process of running for delegate, to ensure all Democratic voters understand the rules and timelines and their impact on voter participation. Anything anyone would like to say about that? I'll ask the question, is that your experience of what's been going on? Yes, Bob.
I would say no, because I don't think there's been any organized way to provide people with information about how to participate in the party or run for party office or delegate. I've never seen anything that's come out of the Democratic Party that advised me about that. I haven't searched it out online, which maybe there is stuff online, I don't know. But in general, I think that it's been very difficult to know how running for any office or running for a delegate to a national convention is set up.
Thank you. I'll speak for myself. I moved here from Pennsylvania, from Philadelphia, and I registered as a Democrat when I moved here, when I became a resident. And I never heard anything from the Democratic Party. I never got any communication. I got my voter's card from the county clerk's office here in Upshur County. And I had to be participating. Somebody mentioned the Democratic women, and then somebody of the Democratic women, it wasn't even in the Democratic women meetings about the 2016 Democratic Convention. So I personally think one of the ways to contact people is when people register to vote, like the Democratic Party must get some information about that. Why don't we reach out to people in that moment? So anyway, I've never, like you said, although there was a point where I started getting donation requests from the Democratic Party, which is the only kind of communication I've ever gotten since I have become a resident here in 2010. So that's 11 years. Anything for anyone else? So I just want to say it seems pretty obvious if you want to grow the party that that's important. I'll just read the first sentence again. The Democratic Party in each state should publicize fully and in such a manner as to assure notice to all interested parties in full description of the legal and practical procedures for selection of the Democratic Party officers and representatives on all levels. And then it goes into more detail after that. Yes, Bob, please.
Maybe somebody other than me knows, but I don't know. Is the Democratic Party in any way notified of people who register to be Democrats, or is it something that somebody has to go to county clerk's offices and search out?
Chris is shaking her head no, but what do you mean? No,
It's all in the van. And in fact, you do get, you can search and say newly registered for young kids that just turned 18. So it's all in the van.
Right. I don't have access to the van.
But people on the executive committee do. And your county executive committee do. So you have a lot of resources around you that have access, and maybe we want to get access.
Does that mean they have to search? They have to actually search it out?
Yeah. You have to run a check.
So we can see that that's one of the areas for this, creating the bylaws that gives us access to things. Like there are all kinds of tools, but if you don't have access to them, what good are they? Okay, good. I'm going to move on to the number 6 basic element of an open party. The Democratic Party in each state should publicize fully and in such a manner as to assure notice of all interested parties, a complete description of all positions as officers and representatives of the state Democratic Party. Such publication should be done in timely fashion so that all prospective candidates or applicants for any elected or appointed position within each state Democratic Party will have full and adequate opportunity to compete for office. Anything anybody would like to say about that?
Maybe somebody can educate me. A lot of these things, shouldn't it be done at the local level in the counties? Like getting the new memberships? Because I'm trained on that.
Selina, would you like to speak to that? I see you've unmuted yourself. I don't know the answer to it. Thanks for the question, Marlene.
Marlene, I raised my hand because, or started to respond to about this number 6, publicizing fully to all interested parties, how to participate. And yes, that's on all levels. State positions, that's county positions, that's precinct positions, which we don't really have, but they used to exist. But yes, I mean, that is ideally what you want to have happen, is for obviously the state's going to have more resources than your county does, but having access to that van, having access to new voters, having a very active and functioning county committee to then reach out to people, to me, that makes complete sense. And then here's the thing, not just reach out to ask them to vote, not just reach out to ask them to donate, but ask them to be have a seat at the table. Ask them to run for office, ask them for run for, a delegate to the state convention or whatever. But when we give people an opportunity to participate, when we fully publicize all positions at all levels, people become interested and want to participate. So yes, I agree.
Selina,
Yes,
could
ma'am.
not some of the resources come off of the West Virginia Democratic website? Could we not go there and get some resources? Do they have that on the Democratic West
When you say
Virginia?
resources, what do you mean?
Go in and do they have it listed that how to run for office?
No.
Oh.
No, they don't even list that they had elections for the foremost. Well, they had all officer elections on June 29th of last year, and they posted election of officers. There were 3 at-large positions, which are not officers, that were not noticed. The officer positions were not listed. It says right here in number 5, that each, there would be, procedures and a description of all positions as officers. That was not done. Nobody knew that those things happened. They only knew election of officers 5 days before. The Democratic man and Democratic woman, which are these committee positions to be on the DNC, there was 0 notice of those. So no, these are not done. They're not on the website. They're not anywhere. And, people are, there's a lot of calling for, resignation of Chair Beafor right now. Her election was on June 29th. If, you wonder, well, why didn't somebody run against her? Well, how can you run against her if you don't even know that there's an election? Or if you do know, Ms. Midget, if you had 5 days notice, you wanted to run against her and you knew about it 5 days in advance, would you run? I mean, how can you run for, yeah. So what are the procedures for doing that? I mean, that's the whole thing about this affirmative action committee is being able to do outreach to people, let people know when these things happen, because if you do not know, you cannot participate. And then when you have a wide pool of people to run for positions on the county level and the regional level and the state level, then you have competition, and you have, people eager for those positions and seeking that out. And, it creates a buzz about that. And, it's good for the party to have lots of notice about positions and lots of discussion about them.
Thank you.
Thank you both. I want to remind us all that those 6 basic elements were put into the bylaws, is it January 8th, 1968? And if you look in the West Virginia bylaws, they originally were there, and then a couple of them were removed, and then a couple more of them removed as recently as 2014. So that's been completely diluted from the West Virginia bylaws. So it's part of why we're bringing that conversation here to this committee of people who have a focus on and interest in being aligned with the integrity of the Democratic Party. Kim, did you want to say something? I just saw you wrote something, and I'm not good at talking and speaking at the same time. I mean, talking and reading at the same time. Would you speak up?
Sure. No, I was just going to say, just for the benefit of individuals here who never actually run a campaign, there are filing deadlines that are required when you decide you want to run. And part of, I think, the position of the credentials committee at Tuesday's June 15th meeting was woefully misleading, in the sense that it made it seem as though there were all of these opportunities and information available to individuals that could have provided for a different outcome, when in fact that's not true. A lot of people will say, well, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? When there's deadlines and fees and measures that you have to take that are associated with the rules for running, it isn't fair to blame potential candidates for not knowing information that wasn't made available to them, right? So it's like, telling someone who doesn't know how to read, well, why don't you read the contract before you signed it? Well, if you don't have proper representation and you don't know how to read, you can't really hold the signee responsible to whatever it is that they signed on the contract, right? And so I think it's important that we keep that in mind, just for, individuals who are not really aware, because I do get a lot of emails from folks where they're expressing concern for things, and it seems as though they have not talked to the leadership in West Virginia. They, the questions that they're posing to the individuals who are affected by the bad policies can't be answered by the minorities. It's not our fault that we were discriminated against. You got to take that back to the leadership and ask them, why are you perpetuating rules and or discriminatory practices that leave minorities or put people at a disadvantage to participate in the party? And so I just wanted to put that out there for folks that are just unfamiliar with the process, with the timeline, what's gone on, the history, so forth and so on.
Thank you very much, Kim. And then Selina, followed by Chris Loken. I just want to say that Delegate Cody Thompson had to leave the meeting to pack and get to Charleston for a legislative meeting tomorrow. So I'm now taking over the meeting. So go ahead, Selina. Thanks.
Yeah. So, these 6 principles and, the Article 8 of the Charter on full participation, it's all about rights of Democrats. And I have maintained for a really long time that when I first started going to DNC meetings, I had no idea what my rights were as a Democrat. And, when you are outside of West Virginia and you see and hear some of the rights that you didn't know exist, you're like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that there were supposed to be equal division between men and women. I didn't know that there was supposed to be this representation for historically underrepresented groups. I didn't know that all meetings had to be open to the public. You know, I didn't know that elections and meetings had to have full and effective notice, right? And so when you take your personal experiences from the last few years of being asked to leave a meeting that's a public meeting, like literally being asked to leave a meeting that is that in hindsight, you know, is a public meeting, when you want to attend a committee meeting and it's in somebody's hotel room at 10 o'clock at night, but you don't know which hotel room it is, you know, things like, and then you look at that and go, wow, these are, you know, and I don't want to be overly dramatic, but these are things that are not new tricks to keep people out. When you listen,
It's discriminatory. I'm going to say it for you because I think you're being very, very nice about it, but it's plain and simple discriminatory practices that are designed to keep people out of the process. There's nothing open about that. There's nothing welcoming about that. And that's not in keeping with democratic ideals. Sorry.
That's right. And these same tricks were used back in, I mean, this is what the whole civil rights movement was about, is like practices that were systematic and intentional to keep people from participating, to keep people out of power. And when I started learning that and realized, you know, wow, we have rights, and let's get together and let's make sure that our rights are heard. And those 6 basic elements, while they are so simple, you know, like you read through them and go, oh, well, they, you know, meetings should be open. You're like, duh. But the fact of the matter is they're not. That doesn't, we are in 2021 and there are still meetings that are not of the Democratic Party. I mean, my own county had one the other night that only a handful of people knew about. You know what I mean? Like, these things still happen, and it has to do with our rights. And the Affirmative Action Committee and the charge that this committee has is all about protecting people's rights. And that's why I'm very passionate about this. And I hope that you guys are as well.
Thank you, Selina. And Chris?
Yes. I would like to question this thing about having to be a Democrat. This does not sit well with me at all. First of all, that comes to mind is journalists. Wait a minute. The first of all is there's nothing open and public about a meeting that is restricted to Democrats. It's not a public meeting. You have got to show some registration card at the door or something. I don't understand this at all. First of all, I don't think it's open to the public if you're restricting it to Democrats. Secondly, what about journalists? They have a right to be there. Thirdly, traveling around the state, I know hundreds of disaffected Democrats that are, you know, independents these days, or Mountain Party or something else. And you're going to cut them out too. And then finally, a lot of our people, I can see people in LGBT and Latinx and disabled who've never even registered, period. You're going to cut them out? Don't we want people to participate in our caucuses? Do we care whether they're Democrats? I don't like this Democrat business at all.
Well, Kristen, I just want to point out I don't like that language either, but in the charter, Article 9, Section 12, it says all meetings of the Democratic National Committee, the Executive Committee, and all other official party committees, commissions, and bodies shall be open to the public, and votes should not be taken by secret ballot. So the charter has open period.
Open period. Okay.
Open period. Yes.
So that first one is wrong.
Well,
that means we can go ahead and do. We can have people who are not Democrats.
Well, this is a great conversation. Bob has his hand up, and then we're going to move on to the next thing. Thank you everyone for your input. Go ahead, Bob. Remember you're unmuted. Yay for you.
Yeah, I remembered this time. My take on this is a little bit different. I think we want people to become Democrats. I don't think we want Republicans coming to our meetings and voting on things. We don't want libertarians coming to our meeting and voting on things. Independents who lean Democratic should register as Democrats if they want to participate in party affairs. I don't think that it makes any sense to invite the whole world out there to participate in party affairs without becoming Democrats.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your input. And Hollis is clapping his hand at some of the conversation we've been having. I acknowledge that. Thanks, Hollis. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was saying I agree with Bob. We can't, again, we want to be inclusive, but we can't invite the whole world if they're not aligned with kind of where we're going. So I want to just second Bob's comment.
All right. Thanks, Hollis. And Rusty?
Well, I think that, we do need to have these meetings open to people who aren't just Democrats. I mean, if we're just going to talk to to our echo chamber, then what are we really doing? I think we've got to open it up. Yeah, of course we don't want people coming in and voting on things, but we definitely want to hear from people. I think that if we shut people out, it's just gonna, what we want to do is bring people into the party. And if we tell them, that we don't want to hear their voice unless they register Democrat, well, they're probably just not going to talk to us at all, So I do think that there's some validity to both points, because again, I do agree with Bob and I agree with Hollis in that we don't want Republicans and we don't want libertarians voting on things that we're going to be doing as Democrats. But I do think that if there are Republicans and if there are libertarians who also, because I know Republicans who feel dejected from by the Republican Party as well. People in this political climate are sick of both parties, and if they're willing to speak to these issues, I think that it behooves us to listen. That's just what I.
Great, Rusty. I got what you said. Thank you. And Selina, I want to just read what you said in the chat. You said there's a difference between having a public meeting and directly participating in the meeting, which is kind of what we've said in the caucuses. The caucuses are all open to the public, and the people that are participating and can speak in those caucuses is the people who are, I'm going to call it, registered into the caucus. And it doesn't mean we don't want to hear from anybody else either, but so please go ahead and differentiate or distinguish that a little bit, Selina. And now you're on mute.
Sorry. So yeah, the whole thing is that these are public meetings that, anything, this is public. There are very, very small caveat for things like personnel issues. And there's some things that, is reasonable, but you can't just say we're going to have a confidential or closed meeting because we don't want people to, to hear us, in general. But yeah, like at the executive committee meeting, for instance, the people in the executive committee are there and they can participate in the meeting. I'm not a member of the executive committee. If I go, I sit in a separate section and I can listen. My level of participation is that it is important to know what's on the agenda, documents that are going to be discussed. So I have a chance to talk to people, especially my representatives, ahead of time. So that's a representative participation. And so if I wanted to run to be an executive committee member, I would need to be a Democrat to do that. So it can be open and still the participation be within Democrats. But the other point that I wanted to make, Mary, is, and this kind of goes to the sixth basic element, number 4, the party on all levels should support the broadest possible registration without discrimination based on status. Now, I don't want to mention any names, but we have a member of our affirmative action committee that is doing a really, really bang up job and is an incredibly important asset to the work that we're doing. And wasn't registered Democrat prior to the opportunity to participate. And then when given the opportunity to participate, they're like, oh, I can make a difference. And I need to register as a Democrat to be able to do that. Okay. Didn't have a reason before to register as a Democrat, but then now had a reason and felt that there was a purpose to do that, and did, and has doing a bang up job. And there are people out there being critical of this person because they're in this position and they weren't a Democrat a year ago. To me, that's the stupidest thing in the world. What they should say is, daggone, if we want more people involved, why don't we create more opportunity for people to make a freaking difference? I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Selina. I'm cheering with you. All right. So anything else that wants to be said about these 6 basic elements? We'll take one more person if there's anything else. Okay, mostly shaking their head no. So I'm going to just move on. And I have no idea what the time frame of this meeting was. I think we just did all of them in 2-hour blocks, but we did not complete by 7:30. So I want to open the rest of the meeting up to those participating here with us. I want to dedicate the next, say, 10 or so minutes for any comments anyone would like to make. Please raise your hand. And if you're on the phone, we only have one person on the phone, and I think you know how to do that if you'd like to make a comment. Anything else for anyone as we come to the completion of this conversation? Well, are you sure? Going once? Anything for anyone else that you want to comment about how this, oh, I see Andrea Greer said, may you make a comment, please. Andrea, do you know how to unmute yourself? Maybe the host of the meeting could unmute you. Oh, there you go. Go ahead, Andrea.
Don't know.
Say it again.
Don't have a microphone.
We can hear you now.
I'm very new to this part of working in the Democratic Party. I've always been more of an activist as far as protesting and organizing, and being a little more hands-on with the grassroots kind of part of it. The party workings have always seemed very mysterious and opaque to me. And I want to change that, but I'm not sure what I need to do. Where can I look for those kind of resources to tell me how to get along in parliamentarian terms and things of that nature?
Well, is it Andrea or Andrea? How do I pronounce your name properly?
Andrea, and you're perfectly welcome to call me Red. Pretty much everybody does.
Red. Okay, great. Thank you. I think you found yourself in the great place. I think those are the kinds of questions that we are all dealing with here. And however you got connected to these caucuses and that you found yourself here in this conversation, I think is the perfect place for you. And, you're completely welcome. The Women's Caucus, I don't know your age, but your voice sounds like you're probably not a youth. And, is there anybody here who has, Marlene is the co-chairperson of the Women's Caucus. And we are open to and looking for just exactly people like you, Andrea.
All right.
if you put your email, what you've probably registered to be on this call tonight, but if you put your email in the chat, Marlene will pick it up and be in communication with you. She's shaking her head yes.
Yes, I will.
I actually started in on this because Selina brought me in on it. And I really want to be part of moving our Democratic Party forward because we're just kind of stagnant in this state and there's nothing for anybody to be excited about. Let's make some noise. Let's get stuff going that's in the state because my goodness, we need it so bad.
That sounds great, Andrea.
I'm just so new. I'm very nervous. I don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to be a burden. So if somebody wants to take me under their wing with the parliamentary stuff, that would be wonderful. But I want to do what I can. I'm tired of feeling like I'm not making any difference. No matter
Sounds great. Consider yourself winged. Okay, we look forward to it, Andrea. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Bob, you wanted to say something? I'd like to call on Harold Ickes after you speak, Bob. Thank you. Go ahead. Bob, you're just old. You keep forgetting. You're not in the habit of unmuting yourself. Come on.
Myself unmuted because I'm in a very quiet area and there's no danger of noise. But somebody, and I think it's Kim, keeps muting me. But it's okay. I knew I should have unmuted. I wanted to say, especially to Andrea, that this reminds me a little bit of when I was a union president, a local union president, and convincing people to understand that we were all the union and it wasn't that there was a union bosses up there somewhere. We were the union and we were the ones who made the decisions. And the same is true for us. We're the Democratic Party. We're the ones who need to participate in making things move forward in a good way instead of letting somebody just say what happens and somebody who's not very good at it.
Well said, Bob. Thank you. And the one other thing I would like to add, Andrea, to you is all of us are pretty fresh at this. Many of us, I'll say, many of us are really fresh at this. And we could call ourselves right now the messy committee. We, none of us know how the past has been done, or many of us again. And what we're doing is we're creating a new path. So thank you for joining us on creating this new path that we've all been dreaming about. And Harold, would you grace us with your just any input that you have to say to us tonight?
Harold, I think if you hit *6, you can unmute yourself.
Selina, can you unmute him as a host?
I can hit a button that says ask to unmute, but
okay.
Yes, but *6, Harold, I believe will unmute you. Yeah. All right. Well, maybe he stepped away from his phone. Right? Oh, there. No. All right. I don't think he's gonna do it.
All right. Great.
I can tell you, he's been on a lot of these calls, and he's very proud of everybody and how this the Affirmative Action Committee has really pulled together, and it's just really fighting for all the right things, focused on the right things. He's just very impressed with what we've been able to do and what we're trying to do in West Virginia.
Thank you, Selina, and thank you, Harold. Before we complete here, I want to read a quote that I kind of live by. I've been living by for a while. It's a quote by Werner Erhard, who said, "The problems we have now in communities and societies are going to be resolved only when we are brought together by a common sense that each of us is a visionary. Each of us must come to the realization that we can function and live at the level of vision rather than following some great leader's vision. Instead of looking for a great leader, we are in an era where each of us needs to find the great leader in ourselves. And I think that that's what we're doing here in West Virginia. We're going to be settling or creating or scheduling a meeting after the caucuses. All of the other 3 caucuses select their co-chairs, and our affirmative action committee will then be complete with all 18 members. And we will be in communication with you to let you know when that's going to be. And on that note, I'm going to call the meeting to a close. Thank you, everyone, for everything you've done up to now and that we continue doing together. Thank you, and good night.
Before we leave, I thought, Kim, are we going to like hang around for a couple minutes? A couple of us?
Yep, that's the plan.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And I just noticed Sarah Fox's comment in the chat, and I thank you, Sarah,